it's his eye again. Oh, my ring light's Hi, my name's Rachel, and today we are talking about, what are we talking about? Today we have another episode of authors behaving badly. Today's one is one that comes to you because somebody in my comments of my Kathleen Hale video recommended that I do one on Richard Brittain, or like gave me the idea to. So thanks, commenter, appreciate you. Today's author is Richard Brittain, serial stalker and also author, but more importantly, attempted murderer who wrote a dumpster fire of a book. Richard Brittain is a British man and convicted attempted murderer who is also known for having won a show in the UK called Countdown. He was crowned Countdown champion in 2006, and 8 years later, he was known for smashing a wine bottle up against a teenage girl's head because she gave him a bad book review. But there's actually more grossness to it than that, so let's talk about him. Richard Brittain wrote a book called The World Rose, but that's not all he writes. He also had a blog where he extensively detailed his thoughts, and one of those blog posts was called The Benevolent Stalker, in which he describes to excruciating detail stalking a woman he went to college with. He even details how she moved to try to get away from him and he was still showing up, having tracked her down. He called her constantly, he texted her constantly, and eventually he was contacted by police saying, "Stop it." And yet he continued. A man with the audacity, who would have thought? Again, he details all of this extensively in the post called The Benevolent Stalker, saying, "Every great romance is about two partners who are utterly obsessed with each other. Romeo, Juliet, Tristan, and Isolde are people who are so passionately and powerfully in love that nothing else matters to them. But what if that feeling was only felt on one side? What if Juliet had rejected Romeo? Would he become a stalker? I don't know, should we go back in time and ask Shakespeare? What are you even saying? It seems that modern society drools over depictions of this intense, obsessional love, but only when it is mutual. Yes, Richard, that is called consent. When it comes from just one side, it is suddenly deemed a terrible thing. Yes, Richard, benevolent stalking is different to malevolent stalking. The latter is intended to cause harm or induce fear, but the former is purely an expression of affection. On Valentine's Day 2014, I sent her another card with an elaborate drawing of a wild scene. In it, she became the character Ella Tundra, and that is how The World Rose began. 7 months later, when it was complete, I decided to try to make my book known by getting into the national news. I found out that she worked in Glasgow, so I traveled there with a plan. I was going to tell her that if she came with me and we faked a kidnapping, we would both become famous. We would go into the hills and camp out for a few days while the nation searched. I had brought the necessary supplies. Richard, it seems as though you are attempting to talk to women. Would you like some help? Because you don't do that. Don't do that. I would like to reiterate that I was not plotting to kidnap her. The line is pretty thin, Rich. I was planning on asking her if she would be interested in pretending to be kidnapped so that we could make the news and people would learn about our story. Yesterday, I saw her on the street and approached her and called her name, but she freaked out. "How?" she said. "How are you here?" She turned and snapped me on her phone before hurrying away. I didn't even get to tell her about my plan. I didn't want to make a scene because people were staring. I also realized that I didn't have the heart to ask her if she would like to be kidnapped. It's interesting that it took you getting all the way to Glasgow for that to have occurred in your brain. I left Glasgow, and I think our relationship is finished now. I gave it my best shot. I really thought we would both become famous. We would have disappeared for a few days, people would have read my book, and she could have played out the lead role when The World Rose is made into a movie. But alas, I'll have to find another way. Okay. Here's the synopsis for the book The World Rose. An epic fairy tale romance set in a semi-fictional ancient world containing elements of action, adventure, poetry, and comedy. The title has a triple meaning. The central character is a renowned beauty, the rose of the world, while the rose flower features heavily in the plot, and it also implies that the world rose up. When Ronwind Drake discovers Sorry, this is just goofy. When Ronwind Drake discovers treasures in a distant paradise, a new golden age seems set to begin, but Ella Tundra will find that all which glitters is not gold as she faces many obstacles in her quest for true love. I read that whole thing and I still don't know what the synopsis of this book is. So his stalking victim, Ella, became Ella Tundra, main character of his book, The World Rose, and she was the perfect protagonist. He uploaded part of his book onto Wattpad. A reader named Paige Rowland read this excerpt of Richard Brittain's book and left comments about it. And she talked about disliking the main character, who she rightly assumed was fictional, but to Richard, Ella, even in fictional form, is still Ella, the girl he stalked. So any seemingly disparagement of fictional Ella was the same as disparaging real life Ella. Here's part of Paige's review. As a reader, I'm bored out of my skull and severely disappointed in what I might have paid for. As a writer, albeit an amateur one, I'm appalled that anyone would think this was worthy of money. Not only does it begin with Once Upon a Time, which you could argue is perfect as this is a fairy tale, and it doesn't work, it's incredibly pretentious, but it's filled with many writing no-nos, way too much telling, pretentious prose, and a main character that I already hate. Ella is the perfect princess, true to fairy tales, so we can at least give him a little credit despite how painfully annoying this is, coupled with a complete lack of real personality shining through. Not only is Ella physically perfect, she's faint-hearted too. Such a fair maiden. Never was a maiden so fair, nor so beauteous, nor so boobalicious. Oh, please. I really hope that in the book he did not describe her as boobalicious. I really hope that that's just Paige making a joke, because if he actually wrote the word boobalicious, that alone is a crime. Richard Brittain, 28 years old at the time, saw this, got very upsetty spaghetti, and used Facebook to track down Paige Rowland, who was 18 at the time. Okay, sorry for the camera shift. I felt like my camera was too far away from me. I was right. You're closer now. Hi, can you see my pores? Hope not. I'm wearing a lot of makeup. Anyway, he tracks Paige Rowland. She lives 400 miles away in Scotland. Finds out that she works at a grocery store, and he traveled the 400 miles to the grocery store in Scotland where Paige worked. In court, it was said that regarding the attack, he went to the alcohol aisle and picked up a bottle of wine. He then went to the aisle where the complainer, Paige, was working. He approached her from behind. She was kneeling down collecting cereal from the bottom shelf of the aisle. Paige said, "Before I went into shock the first time, a colleague pressed towels against my head and someone covered me with a heavy jacket to try and stop it from happening. I heard one customer say to my colleague that someone had come up from behind me, hit me with a wine bottle and walked away. I couldn't believe it. The attack has left me nervous and fearful. I find it difficult to meet new people and am nervous in big crowds." Rowland herself actually noted that Richard Brittain had threatened other Wattpad reviewers in her review, saying Brittain has gained a bit of infamy on Wattpad where he's known for threatening users who don't praise him. Pray for me. That did not age well. He was convicted and sentenced to only 30 months in prison for attempted murder, but then was released after serving half of his sentence. And guess what? Paige is his new stalking victim. Now he's obsessed with her after trying to kill her by smashing a wine bottle over her head. Richard Brittain was given an indefinite non-harassment order and yet has sent her multiple messages. He sent a handwritten note to her home address that claimed nothing was real except their love, and claimed that he would love her forever. He also referred to her as his Scottish thistle, and then signed off the note with, "This page is torn because we are torn without each other." Paige moved to a secret address for her safety. She, at last update, suffers from extreme anxiety and has to take medication, and has dropped out of university since the attack. She says, "I live in fear every single day he's going to track me down again. I was offered victim support at the time but ended up in private therapy. I just feel like the justice system is geared towards the perpetrator and not the victim. It doesn't take into account the long-term needs of a victim of an unprovoked attack. He obviously doesn't fear going back to prison, or he wouldn't have gone to such lengths to track down my home address again. Prison didn't change or rehabilitate him." He also sent her private Facebook messages saying things like, "I dreamed of you last night. Are you going to send me back to prison? Maybe I need it. I'm bored out of my mind. How is the nursing degree going? I was quite surprised they revealed such information about you in court. I was tempted to get a bus ticket to Dundee and come visit you, but I thought that might look weird. Any chance we could just become friends actually? We could keep our communication secret like we did in last night's dream." Then he sent a follow-up message begging Paige not to tell anybody that he had messaged her. And then he went back to his blog and started writing numerous poems about her, calling her his Scottish tartan queen. I don't know what that is, but I hate it. In one of the poems, he said, "In the cereal aisle, we made contact with one another." Made contact? You smashed a wine bottle against her head. She had to have like multiple stitches. She almost died. Unfortunately, even though she took the letter to the police, they did not press charges against Richard Brittain further because he deals with mental health problems. Supposedly, he is in a psychiatric ward in England. She says, "My life has changed completely. easy. I was going to be a midwife and should be almost qualified now. Instead, I'm fighting a battle every day because of what he did to me. There needs to be a greater emphasis on the mental well-being of victims of crime and support for however long they need it. I might have coped a lot better if he hadn't continued to stalk me after he left prison. So that's the story of Richard Brittain and what he did to Paige Rowland, who had her life completely turned upside down all because she wrote a book review. I hope that Richard Brittain is getting the help he needs, though I'm not sure if whatever is up with him that he thinks he can stalk women to this degree is fixable, but mostly I just hope that the victim in all this, Paige Rowland, gets her therapy and her medication paid for as she should. She's right. They should have focused on her as the victim of the attack rather than protecting Richard further for attacking her and then re-traumatizing her after he's released from prison by stalking her. Again, this is why I just want to emphasize, and we've been having this conversation again in the book community, but primarily on Book Talk. This is why reviews are not for authors. You should not be reading reviews of your own book post-publishing. If you need feedback, further feedback post-publishing, which you should have gotten feedback from your alpha and beta readers, from sensitivity readers you hired, your feedback should have come before you published. But if you do want further feedback, have somebody look at your reviews for you and take notes. Have them look at your reviews, take away the good. That way you don't take personally every single thing about your book and make it about you when it's just a book. It's not an extension of you. The fact that this has happened more than once and now we're having this conversation in the book community where our reviews bullying when I don't even want authors to be looking at my book reviews is ridiculous, because if I have to prioritize the feelings of authors when I'm reviewing books, I'm not going to review books honestly, and I should not have to fear the Kathleen Hales and Richard Brittains of the world just for fucking reviewing a book. Anyway, that is the Richard Brittain story. Thanks for watching. If you want me to cover another author and you have an idea, leave it down below. For more of authors behaving badly, I do have a playlist. Like, subscribe, and if you want to support my channel, my Ko-fi account is linked below if you want to tip me. I am considering doing a Patreon when I hit 3,000 subscribers. If that's something you're interested in, I guess let me know. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye!